It is official. The Baltimore Ravens have officially franchise tagged Lamar Jackson as the non-exclusive tag. In this instant reaction episode, we dive into everything relating to the non-exclusive tag, talking about what this means for Lamar Jackson, what it means for the Ravens, and so much more coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Ravens, live edition, instant reaction edition. I am your host, Kevin Ostrecker of Ravens Wire. We are here live streaming on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for tuning in on our network here. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms, including over in video form on YouTube, where we are live streaming this. And this gives me an opportunity today to talk about the big news of the day. Lamar Jackson. There was a lot of anticipation about this. We've been talking about Lamar's situation forever. It feels like it's been this never-ending cycle. We finally got something. It was not a long-term extension, but it was the franchise tag, and it's the non-exclusive one. There was a lot of debate about whether the Ravens should give Lamar the exclusive or the non-exclusive, which it would be. The Ravens go non-exclusive, and here today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it means for the Ravens, what it means for Lamar, and what it means moving forward for the rest of the NFL too. I think it has major implications in terms of what could come next, because with all the different teams that could be interested, teams have already dropped out in the sweepstakes, I guess, for Lamar, now that he has this power to go negotiate with other teams. We'll talk about all of that here today. This is a live edition of the show, so I'm going to be looking in the comment section and engaging with the comments. So if you have any opinions or questions you want to ask, be sure to put them in there. I'll try to get to as many as I can throughout the show, and this will be available after the live stream is over in audio form and also just in replay form if you're listening to it after the fact. But big day for the Ravens here on March 7th, a very special day, as I've said multiple times throughout the course of this week. So let's first start with the big news. Obviously, it's Lamar Jackson non-exclusive franchise tag. The Ravens putting it out right around 3 p.m. Eastern time, so they didn't wait up until that 3:30 that Isaac Newsom kind of said on the Bernie Kosar show yesterday. So what this means, just very generally, first of all, it's going to be a $32.41 million cap hit. It's a one-year fully guaranteed deal. Now, if the Ravens had given Lamar the exclusive tag, it would have been a $45 million cap hit. So they're saving around $13 million, assuming Lamar does actually play on the tag this season. That is still to be determined. But this is a risk. This is a risk for the Ravens for a couple of reasons here. They're essentially taking a gamble on the fact that another team, so Lamar now has the opportunity to dictate his market a little bit. Lamar now can go out there and kind of shop around, say, hey, what do you kind of put feelers out there? What's this team looking for? What's that team looking for? The Ravens are essentially saying to themselves what it looks like is another team is not going to want to give Lamar the contract he's looking for and give up 2 first-round picks on top of that, because how the non-exclusive tag works is if Lamar comes to an agreement with another team, it goes to the Ravens can either match that deal or let Lamar walk for 2 first-round picks. And it is a little bit of a risk here because of the fact that the Ravens, if they were to just trade Lamar outright, I mean, let's be honest, Lamar is worth more than 2 first-round picks. Like that's just what it is. Russell Wilson, what he got from Denver, Lamar would, I feel like, get more than that. I know Russell Wilson is a Super Bowl champion. Lamar obviously has the MVP advantage, but to me, it feels like with Lamar being younger, he would get more than a Russell Wilson package, or maybe right around that. 2 first-round picks is, that's not a lot. So it feels to me that the Ravens are confident that another team will not go out there and give him that fully guaranteed deal. And we've already seen teams drop out of this process reportedly, where, we had compiled a list of potential suitors for Lamar, where it was Atlanta and Carolina and the Jets and the Raiders and the Commanders and the Texans and some of these teams. Well, we've already heard from Danny Rossini of ESPN. The Falcons are reportedly out of the running. The Panthers reportedly out. The Commanders, the Raiders. These teams are slowly dropping like flies, and it's not great for the Lamar camp right now, because you're essentially looking at the fact that, yeah, pretty much you want this deal to be what he's been looking for this entire time if you're Lamar Jackson. But if a team's not willing to give you that, I mean, you kind of have to go back to the drawing board and maybe accept what the Ravens have to offer And if that might not be your first deal, maybe it's the best deal that you have. And if Lamar does want to stay in the situation he's in right now in Baltimore, I mean, I think it gives them opportunities, but in the event that a team does match that, like if there's an opportunity for a team to say, hey, we can get a franchise quarterback for 2 first-round picks, let's jump on that, and they're able to come out to that huge contract deal. If the Ravens let Lamar walk for 2 firsts, I think it's bad management on the part of the Ravens for having it get to that point in the first place and taking a risk that doesn't pay off, because obviously the exclusive tag is $13 million more, but it gives the Ravens this negotiating rights just for themselves. So at the end of the day, I think that this will make the process move a little bit faster, but there has to be some sort of resolution because of the fact that this still just it kicks the can down the road a little bit if you're the Ravens, because free agency's coming up now. It is fastly approaching. So you have to have a situation where you either know that Lamar is going to be playing on that tag, or there's going to be an extension, there's going to be a trade, because again, free agency happens so fast. The Ravens did nothing on the first day of free agency. And I remember a lot of people were mad about it. And I'm kind of sitting there thinking, really, they did nothing on this day? But then stuff came to fruition. Marcus Williams and Morgan Moses, but teams can come in at the last second. A guy can ask for more money at the last second. A deal can come together at the last second. Free agency is pretty much what Baltimore has in terms of what they can do to make their roster better. And I don't know. I think for what the Ravens have, it's just a lot of questions now, but this does give an answer in terms of what the Ravens can do, because now you have the opportunity to say to Lamar, go out there, put your fingerprints on stuff, see what you can get, and then come back to us. And if there's a team out there that gives Lamar a guaranteed contract, which honestly at this point it's seeming less and less likely, I don't know what the deal would be, because of the fact that it seems like teams don't want to be the first. The Deshaun Watson deal was the first, but at the same time, it feels like teams don't want to go there anymore. It feels like that is the outlier, and that's where teams want to keep it. They don't want to bring guaranteed money into this situation, because if Lamar gets a guaranteed deal, everybody's going to want a guaranteed deal, and that's what it comes down to. And it's the same thing with a Joe Burrow or a Jalen Hurts. At the end of the day, you have to look at what the Ravens have to work with in terms of salary cap space. The Ravens were about $25 million over the cap before the franchise tag. Now, assuming Lamar plays on the franchise tag, that again is a 1-year, $32 million cap hit. That takes up 14.5% of their total cap. The Ravens now are just over $8 million estimated in terms of their top 51, about $8 to $9 million over the cap. So there will be restructures. There will be extensions. That's what's going to have to happen over these next couple of days, couple of weeks, as free agency kicks up into full swing and gets into everything that the Ravens need. And kind of looking through chat here, Be More Ravens Gunny. It is a busy day today for me, all over the place. I was on Bleacher Report earlier, one on the radio. Now we're live streaming. It's been a lot. Crack the Nut says, pay him what he wants. Can't build team around him. Don't pay him, lose the MVP. And yeah, Lamar gives the Ravens the best shot to win. It's a fact right now. He is the MVP, or he was the 2019 MVP, and he has that. He has not had the playoff success I think a lot of people want, but at the same time, he's someone who you're not having a Patrick Mahomes walk through that door, or a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen. We can get into debates in terms of who's better another time. It's a different conversation. What I'm saying is franchise quarterbacks, they don't grow on trees. Lamar's a guy, he's a franchise quarterback. A lot of teams, if there wasn't this whole fully guaranteed and even 2 first-round pick situation, teams will be lining up out the door to get Lamar Jackson on their team and to be their franchise quarterback. But for the Ravens right now, I think this is a situation that they can maneuver around and figure it out, but it has to come quickly, because again, it just kicks the can down the road in terms of there was no long-term extension agreed to. I know there was some hope that maybe it would happen, but it just didn't. And now we have to wait again. The Ravens and Lamar, they've been working for a long time. 25 months is a number that it keeps getting put out there. There's a lot that goes into a deal like this. Obviously the guarantees, obviously the length, the total money, but the non-exclusive tag. And I've kind of talked about this, and I'll kind of move into it more in the second segment. But Chris Justice here says, I feel like this pretty much indicates the Ravens want to sign him. If not, you exclusive and trade. Do you agree? Let the market set the price and match. And I do agree with this take a little bit in the terms of, if it was the exclusive, that would be the Ravens, I think, sending a message in terms of what Baltimore would want in terms of sending him somewhere else, getting, let's say, 3 firsts and a couple players. I think now, as I did kind of talk about and Chris said here, you let the market set itself. Lamar can go out there and kind of see for himself what his market is worth. And if he truly does not get that fully guaranteed contract, which from all these teams dropping out, as we've heard over these last couple of hours, I think that sets a market for Lamar in terms of saying, yeah, well, all right, maybe the Baltimore offer is the best offer as the situation he wants to be in anyway, assuming that's the case. Then he just takes that Ravens deal or is more open to negotiations, because we heard from Ian Rappaport and some other people that Lamar's camp wasn't necessarily fully engaged. Maybe the franchise tag is what Lamar wanted all along in terms of trying to set this thing. And obviously, look, the guaranteed contract feels like that was the number one on Lamar's list. If he got that from the Ravens, pretty likely he would have accepted it, right? But for now, it seems like, and I've talked about this theory a little bit, let's say that Lamar on this franchise tag, and it was more prevalent when the exclusive was still an option, but Lamar gets a $32 million fully guaranteed contract this year. We're talking about maybe he goes on the franchise tag again next year. Those are 2 fully guaranteed years for him at $32 million this year and whatever it is next year for him to make that money on a 2-year franchise tag, kind of tag and play and then tag and play again. And then after that, you can hit the market in 2025. And maybe by that point, a quarterback has a fully guaranteed contract and you have much more leverage in that situation. I know the reports coming out about the NFLPA kind of advising Lamar to stick to his guns and keep pushing for the guaranteed contract. But right now, he is playing on a fully guaranteed contract if he signs the tag. It's just not in that, I know a lot of people throw out the 5-year, $250 million figure. $32 million compared to $50 million is quite a steep downcrease in terms of what you have in terms of Baltimore and what they were going to pay potentially and what Lamar's getting paid right now. So maybe they go back and rework some things. But for what the Ravens could have done, I think the franchise tag was definitely the most likely option going into the day. I had my money more on the exclusive, but the non-exclusive was an option I'd keep. A lot of people had talked about it. They had heard. And it was a real thing going into this deadline day. That's what happens. And I think it actually does give the Ravens a better shot at getting Lamar back, at least for this season. Obviously, the franchise tag is that, but I just feel like him playing on the franchise tag is the worst option for the Ravens at this point, because it limits your flexibility right now. As we'll talk about it a bit in the second segment and even the third about just what has to happen here for Baltimore over these next couple of days as free agency approaches. But at the same time, with all these teams dropping out, maybe it gives the Ravens a bit of leverage in terms of maybe making that first-year cap hit a little bit lower, making the second-year cap hit a little lower, and trying to get guys around Lamar, rebuilding a wide receiver room around Lamar. Those are all key situations that we could be talking about in these next couple of days and couple of weeks here. But coming up in the second segment, we'll talk a bit more about what this means for the Ravens and Lamar as a whole on the show. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and also super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. And for me, I am a Denver Nuggets guy, so if you have your NBA teams you're rooting for, I'm Denver. I'm a Denver Nuggets guy. And they play the Bulls tomorrow, so I'll be looking at that money line. I'll be looking at the point spread as well, player points for Jamal Murray, who's close to breaking the 3-point record. And they have more exclusive bets over there, like a 2x3, which is 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. You need to go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We are back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens live. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, talking Lamar Jackson, talking franchise tag. Again, the big news, Lamar Jackson getting the non-exclusive franchise tag, giving him the ability to put his feelers out there, go out, test the market a little bit. It should be something that the Ravens and Lamar will be working towards, again, that long-term extension here. Samuel Lavala says collusion, and I think he's referring to the teams kind of dropping out of the Lamar sweepstakes in such succession. I mean, we saw it was reports about the Falcons, then the Panthers and the Commanders and the Raiders all coming at once pretty much. And people are saying it's collusion because the owners don't want to make a fully guaranteed quarterback contract or just fully guaranteed contract in general the norm. I mean, I wouldn't put it past anybody, but I think that eventually we're going to see one of these quarterback contracts be guaranteed and it not be Deshaun Watson. I mean, look, the Browns acted out of desperation for Deshaun Watson. The deal never should have happened in the first place for, look, multiple reasons, let's be honest. But at the same time here with Lamar, he's a player that I think he's going to get what he deserves. But if that's a guaranteed contract, it's going to come down to maybe if Lamar plays on that tag and play, as I talked about in the first segment. A guy might get a guaranteed contract earlier, like a Jalen Hurts or a Joe Burrow, and then from there, Lamar can maybe have leverage. But we did see Daniel Jones get a contract from the Giants, and that was not fully guaranteed. So I think with Kyler Murray and with Daniel Jones not having those fully guaranteed contracts, if those two had gotten them, it would have been big. And I think guaranteed contracts would have definitely been on the way in. But at this point, it seems like the Deshaun Watson deal is an outlier. And for Be More Ravens Gunny, he says it seems kind of sus that all of a sudden these teams are claiming disinterest. And again, kind of on the same boat that Samuel Lavala is here with the collusion aspect of this. And it could be very real because it did happen in such succession. And I think for the owners, they definitely don't want guaranteed money to be kind of creeping into their contracts because obviously the owners, it's a money league, right? Everything operates on money. And if Lamar's the guy to kind of set that precedent, I think multiple players would follow that and have that in their demands. Sid Malik says, what do you think we do with the money saved from a contract? We haven't put that effort on offense historically. Losing Lamar is a big hole in offensive production. And yeah, like if Lamar were to leave, if this were to end in a trade situation or Lamar leaving on the non-exclusive, quarterback skyrockets to the number one overall need. You got to find a guy, whether it's a bridge quarterback or a rookie, to fill that void. And you're only getting 2 first-round picks for him in this situation if he leaves on the non-exclusive. And maybe those are late firsts. Maybe those are early firsts. No one would really know until a team actually goes out there and gets them. But in terms of what the Ravens could do with the money saved, it gives them flexibility in terms of maybe roster cuts here. I've talked about on the show last week guys who could potentially be salary cap casualties. The players who give the Ravens the most savings are actually Kevin Zeitler and Calais Campbell. Both guys would save the Ravens about $7 million. It's about a $9 million cap hit for each and a $2 million dead cap hit. So $7 million in savings. Maybe the Ravens can work with them to do a restructure that wouldn't be as invasive in their contracts. Maybe they're able to keep a guy like Gus Edwards now. That was a guy who can save them money. Chuck Clark feels like he is gone one way or the other, but maybe they keep Chuck Clark. I don't know how that would work. So there are options for them. Plus, it's Sid Malik says they haven't necessarily put that effort historically on offense, at least investing. Maybe they can save this money for a wide receiver, a Jacoby Myers type deal, a DJ Chark. It's reports coming out. They really like Alan Lazard. I think Lazard's looking for like $18 to $20 million. I personally wouldn't do that, but maybe you can put it towards a DeAndre Hopkins trade. I think that to me is what I would do with that $13 million, assuming Lamar does sign. But the key part in all this is Lamar, that number might not be what Lamar plays on in 2023, because if the Ravens can come to a long-term agreement with Lamar Jackson, as I kind of talked about, that first-year cap hit and even the second-year cap hit might even be lower than what he played on in 2022, which was obviously the over $20 million fifth-year option. If you can make that first-year cap hit, let's say $15 million, the second-year cap hit, $20 million, you're able to maneuver around that with wide receiver, maybe investing in a corner, maybe Ben Powers. I mean, that's a guy people are kind of forgetting about, I feel like, in the grand scheme of things. Or maybe this money is put towards a guy like Ben Powers, who played pretty well for him, although it feels like Ben Powers probably leaves at this point. Matt T saying this was the best move for the Ravens. And Be More Ravens Gunny also saying, was this past combine that impactful to sway teams away from considering LJ8 as an option? And I don't necessarily think that's the whole story. I mean, Anthony Richardson obviously is catapulted. Seems like there are going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 10 here, but I don't think the combine is kind of swaying teams away. But I think it's more the fact that they don't want to surrender 2 first-round picks and give up a fully or close to fully guaranteed contract for Lamar, which, again, I don't think is an indictment of Lamar's talent or anything. I don't think they're saying, oh, Lamar's not talented, we don't want him. I don't think that's what's happening. I just think the guaranteed money is a true sticking point, not just for the Ravens, but for the entire league here. And Nippo says, I believe Lamar wants to get the absolute most. Let him test the market and match the best deal. And sure, I mean, look, I believe Lamar definitely does want to get the most, but also he deserves the most. You know, he's a guy that has earned money. He has earned a big paycheck, earned a big, long, substantial contract. But it just depends on, obviously a fully guaranteed deal is going to impact any team's ability to build a roster around a franchise quarterback like Lamar. So while Lamar, I think, does deserve a huge contract, the contract that he gets is going to impact Baltimore, as we're already seeing with a $32 million cap hit with this franchise tag right now. And then Dr. Caliente says, which teams can be front runners for Jackson? Atlanta is out. Rodgers to the Jets. Who remains? And so, yeah, I mean, we've seen, I kind of talked about it a little bit, and the fact that, yes, Carolina is out of this, in Washington and Atlanta and the Raiders. It seems like the most likely situation for Aaron Rodgers is the Jets. So that just leaves teams like maybe the Lions, maybe the Texans. The Jets could be maybe a dark horse candidate potentially, but you also see teams like New Orleans and Seattle both now out of the race. It seems like the options for Lamar are dwindling here, and his best option at this point, I think it's still fine for him to test the market. Like, I don't think that hurts him in any way, but I think his best option still would be to return to a place he's familiar with. And while it might not be on the contract that he wants or desires, if it's close to it, and again, this is the difference of like where the guarantees come into play, because it depends if the Ravens are offering him, 200 with 133 guaranteed or 220 with 200 guaranteed. It depends on those numbers. But to me, it feels like at this point, with all these teams dropping out one by one, Lamar's best option might be Baltimore at this point. And Tanya Bowman saying, hopefully players want to come play with the Ravens when they know we don't have our star quarterback. Humphrey said all the players at the Pro Bowl asked if Lamar is staying. And this is a good point, because I think there are two things that were taken into account in terms of my understanding, or at least what I believe to be true about the Ravens. And especially, I think this conversation is mostly pointed at wide receivers, where I think wide receivers want to play with Lamar. I don't think the issue was Lamar. The issue was Greg Roman's offense. And Juju Smith-Schuster said as much on Michael Irvin's podcast a couple years ago when he was deciding between the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Steelers. He went back to Pittsburgh in this situation. And Juju said, it's not about Lamar. It's just they run the ball too much, essentially. I'm paraphrasing there. But, and I always, people are probably tired of hearing about it if they listen to me regularly, but I'm Jarvis Landry, a guy that I feel like would have fit in Baltimore last offseason. But if you're a wide receiver looking for that bounce back year for another big contract, one more big contract, would you go to a Greg Roman offense in Baltimore that is a run-first offense, and you're getting 2 targets a game, 3, 4, or are you going to go to New Orleans? You're going to go to Kansas City, Buffalo, some of these teams that throw the ball a lot. I mean, the answer there is a no-brainer. So now with Todd Monken coming in, if the Todd Monken-Lamar Jackson duo can work together, if that is something we are allowed to see this year, which I really hope it is, I really want to see that, I think that for what the Ravens have, this is a much better situation for receivers to come into. This is a much better situation for guys that want to catch footballs to actually catch footballs. Now, I'm not saying the Ravens are going to end up throwing the ball 50 times a game, but if Lamar does leave, and this is kind of what Tanya's point is a little bit, if Lamar does leave, I kind of look at Calais Campbell. I kind of look at Justin Houston. And I say for those two guys, are you staying on a team in the Ravens that look great defense, right? Really good running game. But Lamar just gives you such a good chance to win. I'm not saying, they're winning the Super Bowl. If Lamar comes back, you obviously have to work at that. You have to earn that. But Lamar's their by far and away best shot to win this year in terms of a Super Bowl. So if Lamar leaves, Calais Campbell, probably a last ride situation unless something crazy happens. He comes back for another year. Justin Houston, maybe a last ride situation. Do you want to take that last ride on a team that has a rookie quarterback? Or do you want to take that last ride on a team like a Buffalo or a Philadelphia or a Kansas City or a Cincinnati or some of these true contending teams right now that have that quarterback in place or should have it in place for many years? Do you want to go there? And I think the answer, if Lamar's not in Baltimore, is Calais Campbell might leave. Justin Houston might not come back. So those are things to keep in mind with this situation. But there's so much more with this. Just because the franchise tag is there, there's so much in terms of still what has to come. Because the franchise tag, that gives more options. With an extension, you would have been done with the situation. It's done, finished. With the trade, if there was a trade, you're done. That's the situation. And then you can move forward with a plan. So coming up in our final segment, we'll be talking a bit about what plans could end up being happening for the Ravens right now, what could end up happening if there is an extension, if there is a trade, and if there's a franchise tag, what avenues could Baltimore take here in each of those situations. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into here on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. We're back here. It's our final segment of Locked On Ravens here live on YouTube right now, streaming here. We got the chat going crazy right now. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you again. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. We do put out Daily Ravens content 5 days per week. So if you want Daily Ravens news, analysis, coverage, updates, we have it here for you, both in video form on YouTube and in audio form, also anywhere you get your podcasts. So if you are listening to this after the fact in audio form, thank you for tuning in there as well. But let's talk avenues. Let's talk potential here. And I love getting into these scenarios where we're kind of looking at what could happen, and then obviously something completely different happens because, of course, I'm prediction-wise, I'm spotty. I'm good in some circumstances, bad in others. So let's first start off there. There are three, well, probably a couple others, but we'll do three main paths for the Ravens with Lamar this offseason. Let's first start with the one that we have right now. That's the one we're kind of looking at, the franchise tag non-exclusive. For the Ravens, let's just say he plays on that tag. What can the Ravens do? Well, as I kind of talked about a little bit, it's interesting because, going back to the cap table, you save that $13 million if Lamar plays from the exclusive versus non-exclusive. You can restructure some guys or extend some guys, Ronnie Stanley, Marlon Humphrey, Mark Andrews. You can maybe add a year to Calais Campbell's deal, add a year to Kevin Zeitler's deal to free up some of that money, just push it down the line there. But you have to wonder just where the Ravens, because there aren't really a lot of avenues for Baltimore to save money this offseason outside of four guys in terms of cap casualties. There are other ways to do it. But Kevin Zeitler, Calais Campbell, Chuck Clark, and Gus Edwards are your four there. There are other, options. Michael Pierce is potentially one. Pasha McCary, another. Tyus Bowser, if you want to go there. But in this case, you don't want to move on from a lot of these guys, especially because of their importance. Maybe the Ravens feel like Michael Pierce, that injury isn't great, and they want to move on. I think they keep Michael Pierce. It feels like, to me, Chuck Clark has definitely gone one way or the other, as I kind of alluded to there. But at the same time, with that $13 million, do you go out there and get somebody new? But if you first have to get under the cap, you have to be cap compliant to go out there and make moves. So to me, if Lamar plays on the tag, that's why I say it's the worst case scenario for the Ravens in this whole situation, because that is that 1 year fully guaranteed deal. You can't move that money around. And an extension, you can move the money around a little bit and say, yeah, let's make that first year cap hit go down a little bit. We have flexibility this offseason to do that. With the franchise tag, you don't have that. It's a fully guaranteed deal this year, and that's the number you're working with, 32.4. So the path of the franchise tag to me is the worst case path. But the good thing about this is that the situation is far from over. Well, actually, it's also a bad thing because I've been talking about this Lamar thing for like 10 years. It feels like it's never going to end at this point. But let's move on to the second path in terms of an extension. I think this is the one that a lot of people want to see. I kind of mentioned it in that little rant I went on there about the franchise tag, where you're able to move that money around. So let's say, we're looking at the Ravens cap table right now on Spotrac, and it's about $8-9 million. The Ravens are over the cap right now. That's with Lamar's $32 million cap hit. So let's say there's an extension. Let's say it's not fully guaranteed, and Lamar's cap hit in year one is $15 million. You're taking off about $15 million from that cap hit. So you're going back over the cap by about 7, 8, 9, depending on math, $1 million right there. Plus, that's even before any restructures or cap casualties or anything, extensions like that. You're still able to create more money, and we're going to see some of that over these next couple of days and couple of weeks. Guys getting restructured, guys getting extended, guys getting cut. Because with these big needs, these big holes on the Ravens, they're going to have to go out there and address some of these. We heard Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh talk about the wide receiver room. Corners are a huge need for them. Those are the two that really need addressing right now. The issue, though, is that the wide receiver class isn't super deep. So that's why I think, I'll say free agency wise, trade to me is the best option. The Ravens have their young guys. It to me feels like at this point, they just need veterans, a proven star veteran to go and play with Lamar Jackson. So that's the path. Corner wise, maybe you're bringing back Marcus Peters and drafting a guy in the first round. And maybe Marcus Peters comes at a cheaper price. I'm not paying Marcus Peters $10 million a season anymore. Maybe to me, that is a $5 million deal, $6 million deal. I think, if you can bring back Marcus Peters as your 2-3, right, a 2-3 corner, and then add a stud corner in the first round, a Joey Porter Jr., a Deontay Banks, a Cam Smith, some of these other guys as well. There are like 10 first-round corners this year. If you can do that, to me, that gives you a solid top three plus the depth behind them that you feel comfortable with, where Brandon Stevens isn't your 2, he's your 4. And I feel a lot better in that situation. So it's interesting to kind of look at where the Ravens could go extension-wise. But, I mean, if there were to be an extension, I think that would be definitely a front or a backloaded, deal with the first couple of years cap hit-wise being a little bit lower to give them flexibility while these other deals run their course, and that being Mark Andrews, Marlon Humphrey, and Ronnie Stanley. Because looking at that cap table right now, we'll go back to it. The Ravens' top 3 cap hits, Ronnie Stanley, outside of the franchise tag, Ronnie Stanley, 23.6, Marlon Humphrey, 19.9, Mark Andrews, 13.6. Those contracts are going to run their course, and you're going to have other contracts come into those and kind of take those high expensive cap slots. That will be Marcus Williams. That will be Roquan Smith. And in the Lamar Jackson extension world, that will be Lamar Jackson. So while some contracts run their course, it's easy to just kind of slot other guys in there. Like this year, Roquan Smith making 5 years, $100 million. That's his total contract. His cap hit's $9 million. Marcus Williams on that 5-year, $70 million contract, $75 million contract. That's a $7 million cap hit for the Ravens this year. So they made those deals backloaded to be able to accommodate these bigger contracts. They can do that with Lamar. So it's interesting to kind of look at the needs they have. There are clear needs for them. Like, let's go down the roster. Quarterback with Lamar, they're fine. Running back, they're fine, although it is a sneaky need. J.K. Dobbins is in his last year. Gus Edwards could be cut potentially. Fullback, they have Patrick Ricard. Wide receiver, clear absolute need. Offensive line, it's good to have depth. Left guard is, that's a need for them if Ben Powers leaves. Tight end, they're fine. Defensive line, sneaky need, but they're fine this year in particular. Edge, they're fine. They have young guys. Inside linebacker, they're fine right now, depending on what happens with Patrick Queen. Corner, clear need. Safety, they're fine. They have Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton. The clear needs are wide receiver and corner. Those are the 2 things they should be addressing this offseason, and the money that a Lamar extension would save them in terms of what the cap looks like versus what a Lamar extension on the early years or on the earlier side would look like. It would be night and day. Be More Ravens Gunny saying, agreed, the money is scaring teams off. Yeah, I think that's probably part of it, and I think that's why the Ravens might feel confident giving Lamar the non-exclusive tag for Lamar to go out there and do his own work, do his own stuff, and say that, yeah, you know what, maybe this isn't the market I was actually looking for. It's not as strong as I thought. Let's go back and see what the Ravens have, and maybe we can work out something there. Rose M saying, I think the Ravens did the right thing to allow Lamar to test the market. I mean, sure, yeah, I think so too. Obviously, it is a risk. If Lamar finds a deal he's looking for and he leaves with 2 first-round picks as the Ravens aren't willing to pay a fully guaranteed deal, again, I think that is bad management. And it would be a disaster for the Ravens because Lamar is worth so much more than 2 first-round picks. Matt T saying teams recognize the mistakes that Denver and Cleveland both made. It's better to draft a quarterback and build around them. And yeah, I mean, and it also, to be fair, it is very rare a talent like Lamar Jackson actually hits the free agent market. And while I know he's franchise tagged and not unrestricted and everything, it's rare that teams have an opportunity to negotiate with a talent like Lamar Jackson. Usually it is teams draft their guy, develop him, or they trade for the guy, and obviously it works out for some, and it doesn't with others, like with Russell Wilson in Denver. And I know that for Cleveland, the guaranteed deal was just a mistake, again, for multiple reasons. And also, it's Dejon Riddick saying if Lamar takes the most money 9 out of 10, he will be playing for a terrible team. And that's some of the debate here about if Lamar takes the most money, where is he getting that money from? Like, what team has enough money to give him that right now where he's able to get a fully guaranteed contract and the team gives up 2 first-round picks and it doesn't ruin their roster construction moving forward? That's the debate here, because for Lamar, he can take a contract with the Ravens, right? And it will be probably not fully guaranteed, obviously, but it will give them, I think, enough time or enough wiggle room for the Ravens and Lamar to get what they want to, both teams will have to probably give a little bit. It's kind of pulling the rope on both sides. You got to agree. It's kind of a compromise, but what team is giving Lamar what he wants? It felt like Atlanta was that team. Maybe Carolina was that team, maybe the Raiders somehow or the Commanders, but all 4 of those teams are out right now. I mean, in this situation, where's Lamar getting the money that he wants? It feels like he's not getting it anywhere at this point. And while he deserves a huge contract, it just feels like the owners are not ready, and maybe they'll never be ready to get fully guaranteed contracts as a norm in the NFL here. And Tanya actually agrees with Dejan and says, I agree. I hope Lamar is looking at the fit of the team, offensive line, receivers, coaching. We have flaws, but we still run a well-oiled machine. And then she says, well, except receiver, and we kept Greg Roman too long. It's just technicalities. But I think for what Baltimore has, this is Lamar's best shot to win, and it's the Ravens' best shot to win. I think the Ravens have built this team around Lamar. They've committed to Lamar. The offense is built for Lamar, and I think will continue to be built for Lamar under Todd Monken. But if the Ravens can fix the wide receiver issue, if they can continue to build an offensive line around Lamar that is very solid, and obviously you have at least 4 returning starters this year for the most part, Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zeitler, and Morgan Moses, assuming no one gets cut or traded or whatnot. You have an offense around you where if you can get him with DeAndre Hopkins in this offense, I think this is Lamar's best shot right now to win a Super Bowl. And I think for the Ravens, it's the Ravens' best shot to win a Super Bowl because franchise quarterbacks do not grow on trees. I mean, that's just what it is. You're not going to find a Lamar Jackson just going on the free agent market and saying, oh, okay, we found our last Lamar Jackson. We'll let this one walk. Lamar's unique. You're not going to find another Lamar Jackson here. And Jim Scarborough says, people, it is the correct business decision or the Ravens' future. Let the market decide his value and then decide if they can afford to keep him without blowing up the whole team. And yeah, right. I mean, fully guaranteed contracts, whatever team is going to be, whoever gives that out, it cripples a team to be able to go out there and give one player that much fully guaranteed money. I mean, we're going to see it with the Browns over these next couple of seasons. And for the Browns, they don't have their first round picks for the next 2 seasons, too. They gave up firsts for Deshaun Watson, high draft capital for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson, a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. It's going to impact their team. They're going to have to let go of very talented players, and that's just what it is going to be. So for the Ravens, giving Lamar a huge contract, I think, is within their best interest. A fully guaranteed contract, there's debate about that left and right. But if you can make that cap hit, if you can just make it low in the first couple of seasons, it can give you enough. And then Dr. Caliente saying Steve Saunders' departure, also a big plus. And then Stenson Bennett, but in which round? Yeah, the Stenson Bennett is the Todd Monken special. I'm getting more mock drafts about that every week. And I always say Stenson Bennett, the Todd Monken special. But yeah, Steve Saunders, look, that situation, I've said it on my show multiple times. You can go back and listen to those. The situation should have ended a couple of years ago with the whole, alleged COVID thing where he got the symptoms, came into the facility, gave the team COVID. Should have ended there. But the Ravens, with everything that came out in that NFLPA survey, I liked that survey, by the way. I think it's a very good thing for them to do that, just to get the players' opinions. But I think that will hopefully lead to less injuries, hopefully less drama within the organization. That in itself, I think, is very good. And Be More Ravens again, he's saying so many are on the Stenson train, still not sold on that. I think it would be a Monken guy. So what my point with Stenson Bennett is, and maybe some of these coaches here, is for Todd Monken. Let's go back to Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald brought in a couple guys from Michigan. He brought Ryan Osborne over. He brought David Ajabo over. Maybe Todd Monken has a couple guys he really likes from Georgia and saying, I want these guys on the team next year. Stenson Bennett could be that guy for the Ravens. I think he's, ideally you get him on the practice squad, but maybe Stenson Bennett's the guy for him next year. Casper saying Dolphins are not interested. So the Dolphins are interesting. This is an interesting one. Since the Dolphins don't have their first round pick this year, the Dolphins have to wait a really long time. I think it's actually after the year ends to negotiate with Lamar. So at that rate, the situation will hopefully be solved. I really hope it does not go into next year. That would be disaster number one. That's what you don't want to happen in that situation. So we'll see what happens, but Miami, I don't think is realistic, at least in this tag and trade with the non-exclusive situation. Marcus Wilson saying collusion is gross. Teams aren't even trying to offer any. I think that, again, goes back to guarantees, where if Lamar finds that guarantee from one team and he gets it and he leaves Baltimore to go to there, it's going to impact the NFL forever. I mean, we see the NBA with fully guaranteed contracts. We see the NFL with the MLB with fully guaranteed contracts. The NFL, I don't think they want to get there. I really don't think they want to get there with fully guaranteed contracts, especially with how big the sport has gotten and also just how crazy and how injury prone guys can get at this level. Now, I'm not saying Lamar is injury prone. I know he's had season ending injuries the past couple of seasons, but I'm not putting that label on him right now. His injuries have been unfortunate, right? You don't want to see it, but it's happened. But with the amount of injuries that happen in the NFL, with how violent of a game the NFL is, or how just football in general, I don't think owners want to see that. Don't want to have fully guaranteed contracts right now. And Nick Solano saying clearly Mr. EDC got a better feel of Lamar's worth on the market and trade value. Maybe no team was even willing to give 2 first-round picks. This screams the league doesn't view Lamar's worth like us. And I think, I think the teams would go above 2 first-round picks if they didn't have a fully guaranteed deal. But that's the whole situation where I think the team is just feeling confident right now that they can go out there and kind of have Lamar do his thing. They can do their thing a little bit. Lamar might come back to him and say, yeah, this wasn't what I was expecting, or there just wasn't the contract that I wanted out there, and then they can negotiate from there. Ryan Farley saying Baker Mayfield season. Oh man, that would be so. And look, let's use that to transition into the final part here, which is what happens the final scenario if there's a trade. If there's a trade for Lamar, I'm saying again, a team would give up. I think it would be more, 3 firsts, maybe a couple players here. I think that's Lamar's true value. But if a team doesn't want to give a fully guaranteed contract, and that's the deal breaker for Lamar going to a certain team, or if Lamar wants to go there or not, I don't know. But if there is an actual trade where a team is willing to say, yeah, we're going to give up these assets for Lamar and we're going to try to give the fully guaranteed deal here in a trade, I think 3 firsts and a couple players, and that gives you, again, roster flexibility, cap flexibility, pick flexibility to trade for guys, but you're down a franchise quarterback. And that's the most important part here, where the quarterback position is the most important position here. It's the most important position on the team. And you got to have a good guy there to win a Super Bowl 99 times out of 100. Maybe there's one time here. I mean, I know Nick Foles, maybe it's the exception to that, although Nick Foles had a great playoff run. I don't want to sell Nick Foles short. But regardless, you have to have a franchise quarterback at this level to win for the most part. Great defenses can take you so far. I mean, look, Trent Dilfer, that 2000 Ravens team. Trent Dilfer, a franchise quarterback? No, but the defense carried him. So there are situations where you don't have to have one, but I think it greatly increases your chances when you do there. And also we have Charles Henshaw saying they're going to wait for an offer and then sign him to that offer. It's possible. It's definitely possible, especially if that deal is, not fully guaranteed or in the wheelhouse of what the Ravens were offering in the first place. And, Sid Malik saying all these teams are backing out. Does that mean PCL was worse than even Lamar reported? No, I don't think it's injury related. I think Lamar will be good to go before the season starts. I think it's money related. I think it's owners not wanting to get the contract there. And yeah, Ryan, we got the one time with Trent Dilfer. That is the 99 times out of 100 there for sure. And Sid Malik saying, are these teams playing chicken because they think Lamar's leaving regardless? Honestly, I think Lamar, this gives the Ravens an opportunity to get him back in Baltimore. Like, I think this situation, if it was the exclusive tag, I think it's more likely a trade would have happened, because obviously Lamar doesn't have the ability to go out there and negotiate. There's an opportunity for the Ravens to go and trade him for that Lamar package or what it is. So to me, I think the non-exclusive tag actually gives the Ravens a better shot at retaining Lamar moving forward. But at the same time, there is that risk factor that you're giving your franchise guy an opportunity to go out there and essentially, flirt with other teams and saying, ooh, well, what can I get from here? And what can I get from there? And kind of playing the field a little bit. So there is that risk. But with these teams dropping out, it just looks like for Baltimore, they might have the offer that Lamar wants at the end of the day, even if it's not what he wants right now. He obviously, the fully guaranteed deals, I think, what's important to him. But if other teams aren't willing to go that far, plus not give up the 2 first-round picks, and they're dropping out like this, I mean, I think at this point, again, Baltimore would be Lamar Jackson's best shot. And for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson might be Baltimore's best shot. And then Dr. Caliente, what are your thoughts about Lamar sitting out if he doesn't get a deal? Yeah, I mean, I think for the Ravens right now, I don't think he'd sit out. I think it's more possible. I mean, he's a guy that I don't think situations change. He didn't hold out last offseason. I think for what they have to offer him right now is they give him an opportunity to win. I get the $32 million fully guaranteed. Like, that's not a $50 million fully guaranteed year for him, whereas a 5-year, $250 million contract would do that. But I don't think Lamar's the type of guy to sit out. Like, it doesn't feel like he would do that. But again, if the NFLPA is advising him, it could be a situation where things change and things can happen that way. And Alefante says, this doesn't feel right. Just feels like bad management. It's bad management if he leaves. It's bad management if the Ravens only get 2 first-round picks for him. So I think for the Ravens, they have opportunities here. There will be more to this situation, of course, but that's all I have to hear today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for everybody tuning in here live. We had over 100 people in this stream at once. This has been a great turnout. I appreciate everybody for listening and for tuning in. If you do want more Ravens content from us, we will be having another show coming out tomorrow. Shows throughout the week, Monday through Friday, of course, that's what we do here on Locked On Ravens. Daily Ravens content Monday through Friday, always here. So be sure to stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.